Happy Saturday, everyone. Today is Saturday, January 14th, 2023. And I just want to do a shout out to my Obim. I love you. Today, back in 2020, is the day that we connected on Tuesday, January 14th, 2020. So it's been 3 years. So I shall now be reading to you all the Gospel of Luke, chapter 14, verses 1 through 35, and Acts of the Apostles, chapter 14, verses 1 through 28. So let us begin. And before that, as usual, Merry Christmas. Enjoy the season. Here's my little Christmas tree. Luke chapter 14. Healing of the man with dropsy on the Sabbath. On a Sabbath, he went to dine at the home of one of the leading Pharisees, and the people there were observing him carefully. In front of him, there was a man suffering from dropsy. Jesus spoke to the scholars of the law and Pharisees in reply, asking, "Is it lawful to cure on the Sabbath or not?" But they kept silent. So he took the man, and after he had healed him, dismissed him. Then he said to them, "Who among you, if your son or ox falls into a cistern, would not immediately pull him out on the Sabbath day?" But they were unable to answer his question. Conduct of invited guests and hosts. He told a parable to those who had been invited, noticing how they were choosing the places of honor at the table. When you are invited by someone to a wedding banquet, do not recline at table in the place of honor. A more distinguished guest than you may have been invited by him, and the host who invited both of you may approach you and say, "Give your place to this man." And then you would proceed with embarrassment to take the lowest place. Rather, when you are invited, go and take the lowest place so that when the host comes to you, he may say, "My friend, move up to a Move up to a higher position." Then you will enjoy the esteem of your companions at the table. For everyone who exalts himself shall be humbled, but the one who humbles himself will be exalted. Then he said to the host who invited him, "When you hold a lunch or a dinner, do not invite your friends or your brothers or your relatives or your wealthy neighbors, in case they may invite you back and you have repayment. Rather, when you hold a banquet, invite the poor, the crippled, the lame, the blind. Blessed indeed will you be because of their inability to repay you, for you will be repaid at the resurrection of the righteous." Before I go on, I was on Twitter and I think it was Twitter or maybe it was WhatsApp, I can't remember. But I saw this picture of these two goldfish. One is inside the two goldfish bowls. So one goldfish is in the goldfish bowl with a very small amount of water. And then the other goldfish is outside its bowl, and the goldfish outside the bowl is grabbing its bowl and pouring his water to the first goldfish's bowl with a little bit of water. And the caption is basically, I think it said, "Help others even though they can't help you," something to that effect. But basically what Jesus is saying in this parable as well, about don't expect to be repaid. Be humble and help anyone you can. Now I shall go on. The parable of the great feast. One of his fellow guests, on hearing this, said to him, "Blessed is the one who will dine in the kingdom of God." He replied to him, "A man gave a great dinner to which he invited many. When the time for the dinner came, he dispatched his servant to say to those invited, 'Come, everything is ready now. It's now ready.' But one by one, they all began to excuse themselves. The first said to him, 'I purchased a field and must. I purchased 5 yoke of oxen.' Oh my gosh, I'm sorry. The first said to him, 'I have purchased a field and must go to examine it. I ask you, consider me excused.' And another said, 'I have purchased 5 yoke of oxen and am on my way to evaluate them. I ask you, consider me excused.' And another said, 'I have just married a woman, and therefore I cannot come.' The servant went and reported this to his master. Then the master of the house, in a rage, commanded his servant, 'Go out quickly into the streets and alleys of the town and bring in here the poor and the crippled, the blind and the lame.' The servant reported, 'Sir, your orders have been carried out, and still there is room.' The master then ordered the servant, 'Go out to the highways and the and hedgerows, and make people come in, that my home may be filled. For I tell you, none of those men who were invited will taste my dinner.'" Sayings on discipleship. Great crowds were traveling with him, and he turned and addressed them. "If anyone comes to me without hating his father and mother, wife and children, brothers and sisters, and even his own life, he cannot be my disciple. Whoever does not carry his own cross and come after me cannot be my disciple. Which of you, wishing to construct a tower, does not first sit down and calculate the cost to see if there is enough for its completion? Otherwise, after laying the foundation and finding himself unable to finish the work, the onlookers should laugh at him and say, 'This one began to build, but did not have the resources to finish.' Or what king marching into battle would not first sit down and decide whether with 10,000 troops he can successfully oppose another king advancing upon him with 20,000 troops? But if not, while he is so far away, he will send a delegation to ask for peace terms. In the same way, every one of you who does not renounce all his possessions cannot be my disciple." The simile of salt. Salt is good, but if salt itself loses its taste, with what can its flavor be restored? It is fit neither for the soil nor for the manure pile. It is thrown out. Whoever has ears to hear ought to hear. That was Gospel of Luke, chapter 14, verses 1 through 35. And now off to Luke's second book, Acts of the Apostles. I guess I may have said this before. I guess technically speaking, the Gospel of Luke and the Acts of the Apostles are like 2 letters Luke wrote to Theophilus. Oh my gosh, I can't pronounce his name. The Greek person that Luke is telling him about Jesus. I guess it is kind of like 2 letters. But anyway. On to Acts of the Apostles, chapter 14. Onward with Paul and Barnabas. Acts chapter 14. Paul and Barnabas at Iconium. In Iconium, they entered the Jewish synagogue together and spoke in such a way that a great number of both Jews and Greeks came to believe. Although the disbelieving Jews stirred up and poisoned the minds of the Gentiles against the brothers, so they stayed for a considerable period, speaking out boldly for the Lord, who confirmed the word about his grace by granting signs and wonders to occur through their hands. The people of the city were divided. Some were with the Jews, others with the apostles. When there is an attempt by both the Gentiles and the Jews, together with their leaders, to attack and stone them, they realized it and fled to the Lycaonian cities of Lystra and Derbe, and to the surrounding countryside, where they continued to proclaim the good news. Paul and Barnabas at Lystra. At Lystra, there is a crippled man, lame from birth, who had never walked. He listened to Paul speaking, who looked intently at him, saw that he had faith to be healed, and called out in a loud voice, Stand up straight on your feet." He jumped up and began to walk about. When the crowd saw what Paul had done, they cried out in Lycaonium, "The gods have come down to us in human form." They called Barnabas Zeus and Paul Hermes, because he was the chief speaker. And the priest of Zeus, whose temple was at the entrance to the city, brought oxen and garlands to the gates, for he, together with the people, intended to offer sacrifice. The apostles, Barnabas and Paul, tore their garments when they heard this, and rushed out into the crowds, shouting, "Men, why are you doing this? We are of the same nature as you, human beings. We proclaim to you good news that you should turn from these idols to the living God, who made heaven and earth and the sea and all that is in them. In past generations, he allowed all Gentiles to go their own ways. Yet in bestowing in his goodness, he did not leave himself without witness, for he gave you rains from heaven and fruitful seasons, and filled you with nourishment and gladness for your hearts. Even with these words, they scarcely restrained the crowds from offering sacrifice to them. However, some Jews from Antioch and Iconium arrived and won over the crowds. They stoned Paul and dragged him out of the city, supposing that he was dead. But when the disciples gathered around him, he got up and entered the city. On the following day, he left with Barnabas for Derbe. End of the first mission. After they had proclaimed the good news to that city and made a considerable number of disciples, they returned to Lystra and to Iconium and to Antioch. They strengthened the spirits of the disciples and exhorted them to persevere in the faith, saying, "It is necessary for us to undergo many hardships to enter the kingdom of God." They appointed presbyters for them in each church, and with prayer and fasting commended them to the Lord in whom they had put their faith. Then they traveled through Pisidia and reached Pamphylia. After proclaiming the word at Perga, they went down to Attalia. From there they sailed to Antioch, where they had been commended to the grace of God for the work they had now accomplished. And when they arrived, they called the church together and reported what God had done with them and how he had opened the door of faith to the Gentiles. Then they spoke no little Then they spent no little time with the disciples. And that was the Acts of the Apostles, chapter 14, verses 1 through 28. Please subscribe to my channel. I hope these videos are helping you all in your own faith journey. Please check out my other videos, mostly piano videos, a few videos of me playing piano and singing, a few of me just singing, and etc. I have a few playlists out there as well. I started this YouTube channel about 5 or 6 years ago, and I literally have hundreds of videos out there. And I have around just over 360 subscribers. So please share my channel. Again, a shout out to my Obim. I love you a lot. And for the rest of you, I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Merry Christmas. Enjoy the season. Thank you for watching.